So Borderlands 4 is a big game, and I'm constantly surprised how many new things you can discover even after dozens of hours of playtime. That is why today we're gonna take a look at even more things that the game doesn't tell you. Everything from making farms a lot easier, all the way to getting a lot more guaranteed legendaries, and everything else in between. So let's jump right in. Coming up to number 1, here's a trick that will make your farming sessions go a lot quicker, because guess what? Zed's vending mad machine actually resets both of your skills as well as your ordnance cooldowns without having to wait for them. So for example, if I were to go ahead and consume them, as you can see, both of my, well, in this case dagger and my skill are completely on cooldown right now. However, if I go ahead and visit the med bay, I can just go ahead and exit, and now both of them are fully reset, which means I no longer have to wait in between fights for my cooldowns to come back online. I can just rinse and repeat and go back to the boss fight immediately for all of those sweet loot drops. Moving on to number 2, if you want to actually farm challenges quicker and pretty much complete multiple at the same time, especially in the weapons category, I highly encourage you to actually use the BOD, which is going to be a shotgun with a very interesting all-around perk that makes it count as a shotgun, assault rifle, sniper rifle, pistol, and SMG, so pretty much every single weapon category in the game. Meaning that if you want to just go ahead and complete multiple of these challenges, you can just go ahead and use this weapon against everybody. So for example, in my case, I was doing that sliding kills challenge, and essentially at the end of it, it pretty much counted for both shotguns and SMGs at the very same time. But you can literally farm every single one of them this way, as long as you just go for the weapons category. And by the way, to actually get this weapon, you're going to have to defeat Axmal, which is basically a boss fight right here in the minion. So just make your way over there, and it has a pretty decent chance to drop it. Now moving on to number 3, another big mistake a lot of players are committing is not properly inspecting their weapons, and specifically this may even explain why some of the builds that you may have followed online don't behave quite as strong as the ones you saw in probably YouTube videos. And the reason for that is because there are many other extra stats that you can only see in the inspect menu. So let me give you an example with 2 of the same version of the weapon, in this case a Borstal Ballista. The difference in DPS over here is minimal at best. However, once we bring up the inspect menu, things change quite a bit, as one of them has only a 108% critical damage while the other one has a 146. And this isn't even the most extreme example I've noticed. There were times I found 2 weapons of the same level and pretty much almost same parts, but one of them had up to like a 50% plus difference in some of these crit damage numbers. That is why you're going to want to not just look at the item card itself or at the item on the ground once it dropped from a boss, but actually grab it in your inventory and inspect it. Unfortunately, there isn't a way currently to inspect items that fall on the ground, and the item cards themselves don't reveal the whole truth behind them. That is why that's my recommendation, but you can go ahead and do whatever you want to. At number 4, we actually have a way to grab all of the jetpack upgrades without actually having to complete any of the vaults ourselves, and in fact even do it on any low level character we want to. But there are a couple of prerequisites, and like every other sort of cheat mechanic of this nature, it kinda involves multiplayer and having a friend. But specifically in this case, we only need a friend with a character that already had all the 3 vaults completed on that save, and then also have them teleport to any of those vaults, as we only have to do it in one single location. So in this case, ask your friend to just go in any of their unlocked vaults and then go ahead and join their session. In this case, I'm going to do it with a low level Amon that basically has no vault upgrades. So as you can see, only 1 air dash and also the very long cooldown. In this case, the moment we joined that session with our friend, we can now notice that we pretty much got the upgrades already, and the only thing that we now have to do is basically let them stick. So the way to actually ensure you do that, just get close to one of these spawn points here, which should be close to the entrance, and then kindly ask your friend to just bug off, basically. So tell them to just quit to the main menu, not the party version, the single player version. Point at which you're also going to be kicked out of the session. But now if you go ahead and press continue with that character, you're going to notice that if you exit the vault, now pretty much all of those upgrades have stuck and they are permanent with this character. And this character never even unlocked a vault, let alone completed. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be very helpful. Give it a try, because Gearbox is probably going to fix this really soon. Moving on next though, there's actually an improved version of loot goblins in this game. Actually, from my previous video, I discovered at least a couple more instances of loot goblins in this game, and at least at high level or close to level 50, you're likely going to notice some of these wranglers, aka loot wagons, and in this case it's basically one of these larger creatures with some big umbrellas on their heads. Definitely always get close to them and defeat them, because more often than not I've noticed that they actually have a very strong chance to drop at least one legendary. I'm not sure if this is just like pure luck. It probably is because of the small sample size, but man, have I gotten some legendaries out of this. It's probably going to be worth it in the open world if you're doing a lot of that, so might as well just grab them when you can. Once the, well, mini boss is defeated, you will also notice two of these bigger containers from its side dropping from its body, which will give you even more chances and more loot. However, most of the time those were pretty much duds, but pretty nice to see some of these loot goblins in other forms compared to previous games. And also, speaking of extra chances at loot, especially in Carcadia, you may notice some of these, well, trucks on the side of the road, but instead of them, usually there's going to be a treasure chest. And the thing is that you can, yeah, actually unlock that, and usually there are batteries on the side of it that you can go ahead and remove, which will also remove the shield. It's not going to guarantee or even give you that much higher chance to grab a legendary, but it is a nice, let's just say, incentive to go out there and explore a little bit more, though pretty much every region has its own version of this, so you may want to give it a try every now and then. Who knows, you may get something cool out of it. And since we spoke about taking down bosses, have you ever noticed that if you deal enough damage to their HP bars, you're going to get different flavor text depending on how much DPS and how quick you do it? So in this case, I've noticed this, well, pretty much giving us 4 different options. There may be more than this. So the first level is pretty much going to give you a bunch of oofs because of the high level of damage you deal against the boss. The next level, or the next threshold, actually goes something like, well, this is painful, so you're going to see the painful popping up over there. However, by far the biggest I've seen is that's gotta hurt for really exceptional damage. I'm not sure if there's a level higher than this, because by this point it was already difficult to notice them. I think that they only last for like a frame, if that at most, and most of the time you're going to not notice it unless you really keep an eye out for it and also record your gameplay sessions. But if there's another text besides this, let me know down below in the comments. I would really love to know. I'm not sure these were even present in any of the previous Borderlands games. And speaking of things that you might have not paid attention to, you can actually snatch the shields off of enemies. Yeah, some of these encounters are annoying because you're forced into close range and there are a bunch of enemies nearby. But if you pay attention to the backs of these enemies, if you somehow get behind them, you can actually use your grappling hook to just snatch that away and completely remove the shield, like in the case of any other grabbable item. So this can actually come in handy. There are quite a few encounters where you will even find multiple of these enemies stacking shields on top of each other, and the last thing you want is some, well, just extra immunities. Give it a go, you may even have a little bit of fun with it. And of course, if you didn't notice, your actual dashes give you a slight iframe window. It's going to not last that long, but it can actually get you out of harm's way. So there's a big difference from just tanking or face tanking attacks like how I am in this case and getting a bunch of damage, and then just waiting for that attack and perfectly dodging at the right time. A lot of these attacks can actually be dodged twice in a row, which is what's going to put you out of harm's way and continue with some high damage, especially since many of the abilities in the game give you more damage bonuses. With a full shield on, it may be worth it to actually play a little bit more perfectly than usual. But let's keep on going to number 10, because there's actually a guaranteed legendary farm that pretty much gives us access to any legendary in the game almost instantaneously. And the thing about this is that we can do it as many times as we want at a specific vending machine, but one that we only unlock through a specific side mission called Vend of the Line right here in Carcadia. If you already finished it on your main character, don't worry, you can always start with a secondary one. But the thing about this is that, yeah, we are actually going to use this quest to get the legendaries from the machine at the end of the quest line, deposit that at our bank, and then create a ton of character backups to rinse and repeat this. The reason this works is because your actual bank is on a completely different file, the profiles file, at least on the Steam version, compared to your characters, which is on the numbered files or the number saved files in this case, which means we can perpetually create backups of our character before we finish that mission, so we can constantly bring back legendaries to our bank. So in this case, let me show you how this process is done. We're going to start Vent of the Line and simply progress through the mission all the way until the last one over here at this location called the Dusty Dangler. And you should also have this nearby checkpoint already active, the one closest to the shore. In this case, go ahead and now create a permanent backup of that save that we're constantly going to use to bring back our character here. From here, with that backup already done, follow the mission normally, finish it, and once that vending machine is open, you're now going to notice that we can choose any selection of about like 6 to 10 random legendaries, pretty much from all of the selection of legendaries in the game. However, we can only buy one of them, so pick whichever you find the best or the one that you're currently missing, and once that's done, grab this character and head over to the nearest bank. Go ahead and deposit it and then exit to the main menu. From this point on, you're going to go ahead and delete the current save file. In my case, that was number 4, and we're going to make another copy of our copy of save number 4 and then rename it to number 4, essentially pretty much bringing it back to the state before finishing the quest. In this case, also make sure that you switch to another character from the screen and then back to your character you did the quest in. In my case, that was Harlow. And then you can go ahead, continue, and if everything went right, you now should spawn at that sea or, well, beachside waypoint just like before. And once again, make your way to the cave, defeat the boss again, grab the legendary, deposit it back at your bank, and now you're going to notice, if you go at it, you're going to spot both this new weapon in it, as well as the old one. Though it may not appear in the recent category, it may have to be something you have to filter for, but in my case, it did. So I did this another time just to show you that it still works as of the current patch. So in my case, the new Atling gun, also the Sweet Embrace from the previous run, and of course also the streamer that we just got, both, well, all three actually are here and ready to go. I can now use them on any character. Give it a try, who knows, maybe this will get fixed in the future, though I really cannot see how they could possibly do that. And on a final note, chances are that you spotted some of these world events popping off. Now, at least for the fun factor, they are kind of worth it because it's a whole new type of, let's just say, mission you can go ahead and complete. They spawn at random times and pretty much every map has a version of this. They are named differently and their objectives are different, but in this case I want to cover specifically the airship. If you want a full-on guide on every single one of these world events, totally let me know down below in the comments. It's not like the rewards are the best and you may even find it to be a waste of time, but for those of you who maybe want a bit of a challenge, here's what you basically have to do. Essentially, you have to inflict as much damage to these order ships as possible, and in the meantime there are quite a few objectives you can complete as you're beaming up to the ships themselves, as I'm sure you've noticed. On the first try, typically you only have to destroy property, so in this case taking down enemies as well as destroying some of these, in this case explodable containers, will actually stack up quite a little bit, and you can definitely increase your ranking at the very least to bronze or maybe even higher. This is both going to apply to the ship level as well as on the ground level. There are many other containers like these that you can explode for some extra points. Now, for the second ship that spawns, typically it's going to involve you unlocking some doors to an armory of sorts, and in this case you're going to notice that it requires to be powered up by a couple of these batteries, and typically starting from that room you will notice 2 adjacent areas, and one of them here in the corner should usually have one of these batteries right in the corner. So go ahead and grab it, and that's already 1 out of 1. Now, if you're already accompanied by another player, they can actually wait there, and after like 10 seconds or so, 20 seconds tops, another one will actually spawn in the same place if you don't find it anywhere else. Even if you're a solo player, it functions exactly the same. And once both of these power up the door, this is going to then open up this armory in this case, which is also going to provide some extra, well, let's just say loot. But from this point on, you're pretty much done with the main objective, and you can just follow the destruction path just like before. On your third occasion, it becomes a little bit more complicated because by this point, you're likely going to have to go now through a series of multiple doors, not just one. And specifically the ones that need to be either powered up or unlocked will typically involve some of these consoles you have to hack. For here, just follow any of these red lines/cables, they will bring you to the main consoles that are hackable. And you're going to have to wait similarly about 18 or so seconds for Echo 4 to actually do its job, point at which you can now go ahead and go towards the next door. And here you're going to likely rinse and repeat the same, following that red cable once again will bring you to another console into one of its 3 areas. Similarly, follow that line once again to the door, and this is now going to give you access to that second room. There's only a third one left, and typically, like pretty much every single time, I noticed that this final console is pretty much next to the door itself, so don't search for it, just go ahead and hack it just like before. And once that is open, go ahead and you're pretty much done with it. Now, chances are that you're going to also have a self-destruct button objective. Yeah, in this case, you're just going to want to pay attention to the middle section of the console over here. Typically, the last 2 ships will actually involve some kind of self-destruct sequence. So simply press it, and if you still have seconds left, make your way out. By this point, you did enough damage. And this is why I recommend also applying self-destruct, because you're going to score a lot of points destroying a whole ship this way. Like for example, you can see that in the very next session we actually got pretty much platinum, so that wasn't actually too shabby. Now, is all of this effort worth it for the jobs that you get and for like the 20 or so iridium you get for, I don't know, like 10 minutes of work? Probably not, but it is definitely fun, especially if you play with a friend. So who knows, maybe in the future, if Gearbox actually buffs the drops of these, who knows, you may be more inclined to actually participate in them. But this is pretty much it with the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.